Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, the Mai Pei Gimel, Halacha Dalid Hey and Vav. God willing, finishing the third chapter today, learning Daf Lamed Beis, and we left off on Daf Lamed Aleph, Amid Beis, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. So, Chevra, this is where we are at. First of all, we learned yesterday that Rabbi Yechanan holds, like Rabbi Lazar, an opinion that he didn't even want to share with his Talmidim when he found them to be younger. And that is Mei Eleim Kiblu Lahem Asam Maisres, which means that the settlement that happened under the leadership of Ezra had such little effect to re-imbue the land with Kedusha. Not only was there not a Chi of Midai Raisa to separate Rumsum Maisres Bisman Bayesheni, but there wasn't even a normal rabbinic rule. It was that the people themselves accepted it. That's number one. Number two, we began learning yesterday that Rabbi Yechanan made a statement. And here are the words of Rabbi Yechanan, that Moide Rab Shimon Shuhu Mafrish Ma'asroisov Mehalacha. And what we initially understood, where we left off yesterday, is that the statement of Rabbi Yechanan is in reference to Rab Shimon in our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, we're speaking about a person who gave to a shomer, to a goy, his produce, and the Tanakama said, the great chumrah, that when he receives it back, it's halachically tevel. Rab Shimon says when he receives it back, it's only demai. And the understanding now of Rabbi Yechanan's statement, the Havamina, that it goes on the Mishnah, that what's pshat that Rab Shimon says he's mafresh ma'as reisov, demai, meaning you take away your maisres, it means that Latanakama tevel, you have to separate, let's say, Truma Gedoyla, you have to separate Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, etc. And when you give the Truma to the Kohen, when you give the Meiser Rishon to the Levi, Mafresh, ve'eino noitel damim, because it's tevel vadai, like any other tevel, you have to separate and you have to give, and you can't charge anything. Masha'enken, when Rab Shimon says the Mai, Mafresh, you have to separate. And let's go the way we are continuously learning with the Raivit, your Mafresh, all of the Trumas Umaislis. By the way, according to the Maraf folder, it fits the same. You only separate the Mai separations. Okay, but let's go with the Shita Saraivit. But Narvos then, the Noitel Damim. The Noitel Damim, let's go with the Raivit. Let's go with the Raivit. That you have to separate everything. Truma Gedoyla. Because it's a suffix whether the goy gave you his, which is tevel, or whether you got back yours, which was completely tied. And because of that doubt, you separate, but you get money. You give the Meiser Rishon to the Levi, but you get money for it. The Gemara today will refute this understanding that b'shem Rabbi Yechanan moide Rab Shimon shu mafresh ma'asreis of mahalacha. It doesn't fit with that which we reminded ourselves today, based on our current knowledge, which stands that Rabbi Yechanan holds, like Rabbi Lazar, that may eleim kiblu lehem es hamaisres. This cannot be the understanding of Rabbi Yechanan in the Mishnah, and therefore we will show that Rabbi Yechanan's statement, the shame Rabbi Yechanan's statement, Moide Rab Shimon shu mafresh ma'asreis of mahalacha, was not referring to the Mishnah. We're going to have a new understanding of the Mishnah according to Rabbi Yechanan, and this statement goes on a brisa, as we will see, and that will close off the sugya of halacha dalid, and from there we're going to go into both halacha hey and halacha vav, which are the final 2 mishnayos and of this perek, are going to continue to speak about scenarios where you, the chaver, you give away your raw produce, you receive it back. Question is whether you can trust that the person to whom you gave it gave you back yours, or whether they gave you back someone else's. And there's going to be 2 cases that have a certain similarity, and it's mamash fascinating. The first case will be the case of a pundakis. Pundakis is a innkeeper in the feminine, right? A pundak is an inn. A pundakis was just a diber hakosav boheva. The Mishnah is speaking about a scenario, which was that people, when you went to an inn, what happened was you would bring to the innkeeper your produce and your food. They would have a kosher kitchen. We're trusting that their kitchen is kosher, but they would cook the food for you. And now the question would be, look at us. That's the way it used to be. If you give your produce to this pundakis, don't forget. Let's go. We're going to speak out that Toisvis and Nashi from Bavli, but let's go with one approach that a person always wants to make their customer feel they're getting a good service. When you give your raw food into the cook by the kitchen in the inn, if they will somehow ruin your food, they don't want to give you back burnt food or inferior food. They will exchange it with their own raw material to make sure that you, the customer, you're going to get the best of quality of food back. And we're speaking about a case where the guest is a chaver, the pundakas, this innkeeper, is a ama aretz. So again, that will be the issue. Do we trust that you're getting back your food and therefore it's completely tithe? Or is it coming from the pundakas and therefore it's the mai? That will be halacha dalit, and halacha vav, which is the final mishnah. Weiter speaking about a similar case, which is a son-in-law with a mother-in-law. Case where the son-in-law comes home, he brings raw food, he gives it to the mother-in-law. Same concept. Do we say that the mother-in-law is not going to want if she ruins the food, to give ruined food to the son-in-law, or she doesn't want for her daughter to have bad food, so she will exchange it with her own? Again, the son-in-law is a chaver, the mother-in-law is an ama aretz. Do we have such a chash? Will the food that you get back be demai? Or even more than that, when you give it to the mother-in-law, when you give it to the innkeeper, do you have to tithe it if it's not yet tithe? Even though you'll have to tithe it again when you get it back, as we will see. And one thing is clear, the Gemara says, is that if you give your food to a neighbor to cook, L'kula alma, your neighbor is not suspect that they will exchange it with their own. They will give you back exactly what you gave them cooked. And therefore, when you give it to them and it's already completely tight, when you get it back, you can take it and you can eat it. We're going to clarify whether the Mishnah is speaking about a son-in-law from Erusin, a son-in-law from Nisuyan, as we will see our sugya. And Chavra, let's come back inside to Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. All right. So again, Rabbi Yirmiyah, in the name of Rabbi Chia, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, said the words that Moed Rab Shimon Shu Mafrish Ma'asreis of Mahalach. The initial understanding was that this statement was in reference to Rab Shimon and our Mishnah, and that means that Rab Shimon is saying that you have to be Mafrish. Guys, we're going with the Ravid. We can learn the same sugya a different way. It's going to be the same thing, but we're going to follow one sheet. You separate everything because the Mai in our Mishnah is not the normal Mai. You separate Truma Gedoyla. You separate Ma'aser Rishon. Elama, you charge money from it. The Tanakama that says that when you give it to the goy, to the shomer, we paskin that he gave you back his own, the goys, then you have to be mafresh it, and you can't charge any money. And we will have a big problem with that. What will be the problem with that? Because we just finished saying that Rabbi Yochanan holds that the Chachamim, the Tanakama of our Mishnah, does not follow Rav Meir. He holds that even though it's Tevel Gamur, so what? The whole obligation of Tevel Gamur Bisman by Yesheni, by the Mishnah, is only Me'eleim Kiblu. And if Me'eleim Kiblu, it means that the obligation to give is even weaker than the rabbinic enactment for the lands around Eretz Yisrael that have their produce tithe, because that's already Gzeirim in the Rabbanan. And the Gemara is now going to tell you Noch HaChidish, Chavre, that when you live outside Eretz Yisrael and mid Rabbanan, you have to be mafresh trumas u'maisres, you get to charge money from the shevet, from the kohen, and from the levi to whom you're giving it. Wow. And now the Gemara is going to say that it can be that the obligation mid Rabbanan, which again the premise is that you can charge money from. If you can charge money when you're following a rabbinic enactment, then for sure you should charge money l'chachamim l'tanakama when you are giving it from produce in Eretz Yisrael. That's even on a lower level of trumas u'maisnes because it's only me'aleim kiblu. So you can't explain the machlokes Tanakama and Rab Shimon l'Rabbi Yochanan is that everyone holds you have to be mafresh. No, then the Tanakama says you're mafresh and you don't charge money, right? Mafresh ve'eno noitel damim, frekti gemara, and it can't be. 3 lines from the bottom, that afilu, let's go with the chaf, ketrumas chutz la'aretz eino, can't be. It can't be that the Tanakama is going to be holding that it's more chamur than trumas chutz la'aretz. Ilu trumas chutz la'aretz, which according to Rabbi Yochanan, that holds like Rabbi Lazar, is a greater obligation. It's a real rabbinic enactment. Nevertheless, Shema Eino Noitel Damim in Hashevet. Do you think that when a person is mafresh trumas or maasros, if they live in Syria or if they live in all of these lands, you think they don't charge money when they give it to the Kohen? You think they don't charge money when they give it to the Levi? They do. And therefore, it can be that there you get to charge money. And Tevel, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Lazar in Eretz Yisrael, Mishnah says, Tanakama says, Rabbi Yochanan says, it's the Chachamim, that it's Tevel Gomer, that you don't get to charge money. That can be. Das kann nicht sein. So therefore, it must be that the Tanakama that says it's Tevel, this is only according to Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Lazar and our Mishnah holds, yes, you have to separate. Let's go everything with the Ravid. You have to separate Trumas u'Maisos. And you give the Truma Gedoyla to a Kohen, but you could charge money. You don't have to give it to him gratis, for free. You take Meiser Rishon and you do give money. You give the money. Rab Shimon, who holds that it's the Mai, he means that you don't even have to be mafresh Meiser Rishon. Rab Shimon, the Gemara concludes, Rabbi Yochanan holds that you don't even have to be mafresh Meiser Rishon. For example, why? Because you don't even have to do it. It's not only about the Kedusha aspect from it, but since L'Tanakama, Rabbi Yochanan, Mumuzagin, that the tithes have to be separated, but you charge money from it, when Rab Shimon says it's less, it means you don't even have to separate. And by the way, now let's just go quickly to the Marafulda. This now will be the pshat of Rabbi Yochanan and Rab Shimon in the Mishnah, even according to the Ravid. That in the Sefer of the Mishnah, when he says the words the Mai, he means we have a doubt. The Mai means L'Ravid, a doubt. And since Me'aleim Kiblu, a doubt means you don't even have to separate. Unbelievable. So, in other words, according to this, everyone, even the Ravid, will accept at the Sefer of the Mishnah, L'Rab Shimon, L'Rab Yochanan, the might now would mean what it always means. So when it comes, let me go back to Truma Gedoyla, according to the Ravid, that you have to give, because that there is a Kedusha aspect to it. When it comes to Trumas Meiser, there is a Kedusha aspect in it. But you don't have to give the Meiser Ish. It must be Pshat. And therefore, since that must be Pshat, L'Rab Yochanan and L'Rab Shimon, when they quoted B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yirmiyah, B'Shem Rabbi Chir, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, that Moed Rab Shimon Shu Mafresh Ma'asreis of Mahalacha, it cannot be referring to our Mishnah. Now we're going to go to the top of Daf Lamed Beis. This is amazing. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan's statement was said regarding a Braisa. That's the Pshat. Dilma al Iker Tivlei Shel Goy is Amrat. This statement was not said regarding the Mishnah. What was it said regarding? A whole different topic. And what's the whole different topic? The topic that we keep on mentioning. We never learned it explicitly here. Shitas Rav Meir that we keep on repeating, which is Ein Kinyan La'akum, that a goy's ownership does not remove its obligation of tithing. And by the way, let's go even Bisman Bayis Rishon. Doesn't matter. Forget about what was the status Bisman Bayis Sheni. And who disagrees with Rav Meir, guys, it's Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon. Let's read it inside. Begin the Tani, Rabbi Yochanan's, this statement, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, that Moed Rav Shimon Shu Mafresh Ma'asreis of Mahalacha, it's regarding the following. Rav Meir says, Ein Kinyan La'akum. Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon oimdim in the Braisa, that Yesh Kinyan L'Goy Be'eretz Yisrael L'Patrim and Amaisres, that when he owns land, that downgrades the Kedusha, and therefore produce, even Bisman Bayis Rishon, will not be obligated inherently Midoy Raisa to be tithe, that Alei, on that, the Shita says Rabbi Yirmiyah in the name of Rabbi Chir, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, that even though Rab Shimon, like Rabbi Yehuda, argues with Rav Meir, Yesh Kinyan La'akum, it doesn't mean Yesh Kinyan La'akum, and therefore it's not even Mechoyev Midrabanan. It means that you're not Chayiv Doiraisa. But why did Rab Shimon Shu Mafresh Ma'asreis of Ma'alacha, that rabbinically you're Chayiv to give Trumas u'Maisres? This is Gavaldik. Okay, and with this we conclude the sugya. And just for the record, I know that the Gabbai spoke to me yesterday about it, that even though we had again a machlokes, the Ravid and the Marafulda, how to understand the May in our Mishnah, now it's going to come out that only according to Rabbi Yochanan. which means only according to the opinion that may Eleim Kiblu Aleim Esamaisres, which is what Rabbi Yochanan holds. Well, Rabbi Yochanan understand in Rab Shimon that here the Mai does mean what it always means. Masha Enkein in the Reisha of the Mishnah. Okay, we're going to stop. That's the sugya over here. And now we're moving on now to Halacha. Halacha is continuing the theme of someone, a chaver, who gives away his food. He gets it back in a different state. Until now, we were speaking about a custodian. We were speaking about there was a wholesalers, and you're selling it. Now we're learning about the way things worked in an inn, that you brought your food, you gave it into the kitchen, and they cooked it for you. And by the way, I think this even happens today. Today they don't cook it for you. Today, many people double wrap their food. They can have hot food. You go even to a non-kosher inn, and you get it back, and it's sealed, and it's double wrapped. There, we're speaking about a kosher inn. We're speaking about someone who has the ne'emanus regarding kashrus. You're not concerned that they're going to give you back that's not the concern. The only concern is that if the pundakis, this woman innkeeper who was in charge of the kitchen, if she would ruin your food, which can happen when you cook food, will she replace it with her own raw grain, with her raw vegetables? In other words, she'll make the dish again using her own, and she's an amaretz or an amaratzte, and therefore when you get back, you might have to tithe it. And more than that, the key will be that there's a rule that a chaver is not allowed to give away his produce prior to tithing it. Now, just for the record, a pundakis is not allowed to exchange, take your food and give you back her food without letting you. She's not allowed to do that. So let's go read it inside. So you're the guest, you're a chaver. The innkeeper here is an amaretz. You're giving the innkeeper your raw food for her to cook it for you. Says the Tanakama, you have to both ma'aser eshehu noisela prior to giving it to her. You have to take off all the trumas u'maisers. Like we mentioned, the chaver is not allowed to give away his food if it's not fully rectified, even though you're making an exercise with the knowledge that when you get it back, you have to do it again. The eshehu noitel mimenom. And when you get it back, you have to again tithe the my separations. Why? So again, when you give it to her, a person can say, if I have to, when I get it back, I have to take off my sasheni. Let me only do it once. No, it's two separate dinim. A chaver is not allowed to give away food that's not mesukim. You give it to her, even though you're getting it back. You know that she might take it, she might exchange it. So if you know she might take it, you have to cover her. You have to be mesakin it. Now, when you get it back, she exchanged it. She might exchange it. And now the question is, now why are we suspecting? Why were we suspecting the cook to exchange the food in the Babli? There's a machlekes Rashi Toises. Rashi says, and we're going to go with Shitas Rashi, that whenever there's a customer, a balabas and a customer relationship, the balabas in America has to service the customer, and you want for the customer to return. And whenever you're cooking food, there's always the chance that whatever you did didn't come out as good as you hoped. Right? Not everyone is as amumcha like Mayan over here. And therefore, to make the customer happy, she's going to exchange the food. So she's being moida heted for herself because she thinks she's doing the customer a service. Little does she know that she's also hurting the customer because the customer already separated the demai separations. And then when you get back the food, you have to do it again. Tosfos holds the opposite. Tosfos holds that when in the previous Mishnah, let's say the custodian is taka doing me a service, but he's not working with my food, he's just watching for it. Here, when a cook is working with the food, a cook might justify for herself to say, I'm already investing so much time and effort, and I'm giving you back such a delicious dish, I can benefit, I have the right to exchange.
What's the percentage to buy again?
The percentage is going to be 11%. Not really. You really only lose 1%. Because the other 10% is yours, but it's my sasheni. But still, in other words, I have to take off the 1%. If I buy food, if I'm a chaver and I buy food in the market, I have to separate the my separations. And then when I give it into the cook, and then when I get it back cooked, I have to do it again.
You have to
Give 11. Oh, Rabbi Yossi says, what are you talking about? A cook has no right to exchange your food with her own. If she does it, what is she? She's a ganefta. She's a thief. So why are you telling me that before I give it to her, I have to tithe it? No. Why do I have to tithe it? Do I have to be concerned that if she steals from me, she should have kosher food? It's on her. I'm not responsible for someone who's a swindler. When I get it back, I have to tithe it. When I get it back, I have to take the my separations. I don't have to protect the pundakis from transgressing if she's anyways transgressing. She's stealing from me. She's not allowed to do that. Why do I have to be concerned that the ganefta should not have the ma'usar foods? The Tanakama holds, it's not about me being concerned for her. There is a rule that a chaver is not allowed to give away his produce prior to being fully tithed. Oh, now you should know that there is a machlokes in Masechtas Ma'aser Sheni that one can really relate to our machlokes. There we're speaking about a question: if I have a field that's now filled with arla produce, only I know, I'm the owner, or neter avoy, you have to eat it in Yerushalmi. Do I have to put up big signs in my field, arla or neter avoy? Do I have to do it? Why would I have to do it? Same thing. Maybe someone is going to go and take food. Or do I say, if you're going to come and steal food, I have to be concerned for you? You're not allowed to steal. No. Or do we say, no, someone might come and take it? It's amazing. So, very good. So when we learn, the Mishnah begins by a person has to mark his field if it's arlo neter avoy. That is a sheet of the Tanakama. When always on that, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, look inside the Marafulda in the beginning of the Gemara, even before we read the Gemara. Chachamim say you have a field of arlo, you have to put signs arlo. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, I'm reading inside the Marafulda only in the year of Shemitah, because everything is hefker. So everyone has the right to take produce. I'm responsible to let everyone know that you should know that's arlo or it's a neter avoy. But in the other 6 years, no, I don't have to do that, because if you come into my field to take, you're a gazlan. So it says, he's quoting a pasuk. I'm reading inside the Marafud. If someone is going to come and take, it says, "Haliteyu l'rasha v'yamas." Serve the rasha and let him eat and die. In other words, I have to prevent the ganef from not eating arla. If he's a ganef, let him eat arla. It's not my problem. A very obviously Yisraelic approach. Okay. So and the Tanakama says, no, you have to put a sign up. Now, we'll begin Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah that says that before giving the food to the cook and the pundakis, you don't have to tithe it, because if she's going to exchange it, she's a thief. Let her. I don't have to be concerned about it. So Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Luchur are saying the same thing. Shneim amru davar echad. Kamod Rabbi Yossi Amar in our Mishnah ein anu achroim l'ramoyim. So Kain Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Amar ein anu achroim l'ramoyim. And therefore, they both will agree with each other's opinion. That is the Havamina, to which the Gemara says you're making a good connection, but it's not both a two-way connection. It's only a one-way connection. I will agree with you, Miss Tabra, that Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah will agree with Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel that if you own a field only on the Shemitah year, do you have to put signage up during the rest of the 6 years, even if the produce is arla? I don't have to put a sign up because I know it. The ganef haliteu l'rasha v'yamas. But Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who holds like what we just mentioned, will agree with the Chachamim over here. They will not agree with Rabbi Yossi. Why is that? I'll tell you by heart. Then here we're speaking about I am giving it to the cook. It's a big difference. The Ma'aser Sheni is I'm not giving anything. I'm not opening the door. I have to be concerned that someone is going to break into my field and steal, and I have to let them know that it's not that it's arla. Rabbi Shimon only says that I don't have to do. Over here, it's different. Here, you're giving your raw food to the cook. So now, does the cook have the right to exchange it? Halachically, no. But let's go with Rashi. But if the cook, used my grain, and they made oatmeal, but they burnt it. They made it to this, to that. And the cook feels, I don't want my customer to have burnt food. The customer doesn't see herself stealing. She says, no, I'm going to keep the burnt oatmeal for me, and I'm going to give the customer my good quality grain. That is something that might happen, and we do have to be concerned with such a person, even though they're not allowed to do it, but they're not doing something as bad as breaking into the field. Gemara says, why? Because if it's not Shemitah Yer, she'ein anu achroim l'ramoim. If someone is a ganef, Einach should be responsible to look out. The ganef should not do something wrong. Because she'ein derech chaver liyos moitzi mebeis yudav she'ein mesukah. More says like this, that like the Tanakh holds. This is not about the chaver looking out for the pundakis. He's not looking out for her. There's a rule that a chaver is not allowed to give away his produce prior to it being fully tithed. That rule you can't circumvent because he's giving it. Over there in the Mishnah Ma'aseh Sheni, you're not giving anything. Someone is coming and taking it from your field. I want you to know that, we heard these stories, and every group has a story with their Rebbe, which is nice. It's a nice story. Remember that story that someone broke into that person's house and they stole the candlesticks, and the tzaddik, the balabas, went running after them, not to chap them, to tell them, I'm giving it to you as a gift. In other words, we're not achroi, even according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, it doesn't mean that there's no lefnim mishudas hadin over here. But me'ikar adin, there's a machlokes tanoim. Gewaldig. And now let's go to the Aflamed Beis Amid Beis, and we're going to have another case that's similar to the case of the Pundakis. But instead of you giving your raw food to an innkeeper, and that's a business, and let's go with Shitas Rashi, there is a reason why she might exchange your raw food because she ruined it, and she wants to make the customer happy. What's the din with the mother-in-law? Oh, I know everyone has their unique mother-in-law, so you know how to custom make this for yourself, but the same kasha is over there. In other words, we're speaking about a guy that is coming to the mother-in-law's house. He's bringing his own raw produce. She's going to be cooking it for him and for her daughter. We're speaking again about a case where the chaver is the son-in-law is a chaver. The mother-in-law is an amaretz, an amaratzta. And the question is, will she exchange it with her own? And if she will exchange it, same thing. Let's read it inside. Says the Mishnah, halacha vav daflamed beis. Someone gives their raw food to his mother-in-law. So same thing the Tanakh says. Maaser eshu loisam. You can't say that since anyways what she gives back to me has to be the my tithe. Let me just do it once at the end. You can't say that. Prior to giving her the raw food, you have to separate the my separations. And then or if the chavid is the farmer, he has to separate the tevel separations. So you have to give her a product that is on all levels. Midoraisa, midarabanan, me'eleim kiblu. That's completely tight. But it doesn't help that you gave her something that's completely rectified, because when she gives you back your cooked food, you have to be choishish that she might have exchanged it. The eshu noitel mimeno. Like we had by the Pundakis, because if the food will spoil and she wants to give him good food, she'll exchange it. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're going to learn, like the Marafulda says, that Rabbi Yehuda is the Tanakama. By the way, there are Chachamim that argue with this, but this Rabbi Yehuda is the sheet of the Tanakama. But he's further breaking down the reason why we suspect for her to exchange it. It's not only, like we said, because if the food spoiled, that's one part. There are really two reasons why we suspect her. Number one, she doesn't want for her daughter to eat spoiled food. In other words, it's not about she doesn't want her son-in-law to eat spoiled food. She doesn't want to be embarrassed for her son-in-law. It's another nuance. So you have these double reasons. So she wants for her daughter to have spoiled food. She doesn't want to be embarrassed from her son-in-law. That's enough of a reason for her to exchange it if she ruined it. Now, Chavre, could be she didn't ruin it. I know that. but there's a suffix, and you can argue. So it's a svek sveka. Don't forget that her produce to begin with is only damai. That's the whole chiddush. We don't say svek sveka. There's an obligation of damai. We suspect that she exchanged it, so it remains damai. Okay, and we will see in the Gemara that there is a sheet of the Chachamim that argue with this. There is a sheet of the Chachamim that the mother-in-law doesn't care so much about the son-in-law. She's not so concerned about her daughter that she won't exchange it. She's concerned in her honesty. Okay, so our Mishnah is not quoting that Chachamim, even though it looks like there's Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda. To get that clear, the Reish is all Shittas Rabbi Yehuda. Now, it says the Mishnah, now that we implied that there is a sheet of the Chachamim that no, the mother-in-law will give back the food, and if it's spoiled, she'll give back her food. Umayde Rabbi Yehuda, to the Chachamim that are not mentioned, that she will not exchange her food, even Rabbi Yehuda's Maida, that if a son-in-law who's a chaver is giving to his mother-in-law raw food for her to prepare on the Shemitah year, and what is he giving her then? He's giving her non-Shvi'is food on the Shemitah year. Most people don't have access to it. It's hard to have access to it. Most people have Shvi'is Shvi'is, which is Asam Midrabanan. Here, She'ena Chashuda Lahachlav Lahachal is Bita Shvi'is. Here, even a Yam Ha'aretz considers Shvi'is more problematic than the Mai. So even if she doesn't want to be give her daughter bad food, she's spoiled. Even if she doesn't want to be embarrassed, she will not give back Shemitah food. She won't do that. Even the Amma Aretz. Now, I know we spoke, there's a machlokes, whether an Amma Aretz is also nechshad on Shemitah or not. It doesn't go to either way. Whether she's nechshad or not, even if she's nechshad, but they took Shemitah more seriously than the Mai. So it's a balance. It's, she doesn't want to be embarrassed in front of her son-in-law. On the other hand, even the Amma Aretz, they cared about the kashrus. Like, no, not in the last Mishnah, not in this Mishnah, we're saying maybe they're giving you non-kosher food. We don't have that chashash. They kept kosher. Okay. Beautiful. It says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Uf kadmaisa al dati Rabbi Yehudahi. The way we already spoke out from the Marav Fuldan. When you read this Mishnah, unlike the previous Mishnah, don't learn Pshat that the opening line of the Mishnah. Don't understand that that's the Chachamim or that's the Tanakama. And Omar Rabbi Yehuda is a new Shita. No, the opening line is Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, like we had in Halacha, hey, Rabbi Yehuda holds when you give food to the Pundakis, Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Pundakis, which is what did we learn in the last Mishnah? That a Pundakis is suspect of exchanging the food. Now, the reason why we said over there, let's go with Rashi, because if she wants the food, if you are a business person, you want to make sure the client who eats in your restaurant who paid money will get the superior food. So the same thing is with the mother-in-law, son-in-law. Not that he's paying her. He doesn't want for the daughter to have spoiled food. He doesn't want for the son-in-law to be, she doesn't want to be embarrassed. She doesn't want for the son-in-law to say, the food that my mother-in-law made got burnt. In other words, there's enough of a reason why she will be melamed zchus on herself, justifying that when she's making the exchange, she's doing them a service. She's helping them. However, what the Mishnah did not explicitly say, but it's implied from Umayda Rabbi Yehuda, that there is a Chachamim that argue. Rabbeinu HaKadosh didn't write it. What do they hold? That's the Gemara. The Rabban and Amrin, Hanois and Lachamoisa, giving raw food to your mother-in-law to cook for you is mamish like you giving food to your neighbor for your neighbor to cook to you. And just like we will see in a moment that your neighbor is never suspect to exchange your food with theirs, they will not do that. And even if the neighbor ruined your food a little bit, they'll be maida. Listen, they're doing you a favor. You're not paying the neighbor. It's not the pundakis. So they'll say, listen, I'm sorry. I did the best I could and take back what you gave me. And if they will exchange it, they'll tell them. And no one argues with that. With the neighbor, the Chachamim hold that the mother-in-law is not different than a neighbor. She's not that concerned with her daughter, with her son-in-law. She's more concerned with being honest. Okay. Says the Gemara, where do we learn? Now, where do we learn the din of a neighbor? So the Mishnah never wrote about the neighbor. So says the word kahadod the tani. Yeah, we have that explicitly in a brayso that hanoisim l'shchentoi pas le'efes boy. Again, we're not speaking about a custodian. A custodian we had in halacha dalit. We're speaking about giving raw material, raw food for someone else to cook it for you. So this case will be you have a flour and you're asking your neighbor Tina make bread, and the neighbor gave you back bread. Right? So again, the chashash will be is that when they needed the flour, maybe they added too much water, too little water. They did something that downgraded the quality, and the neighbor maybe will exchange or keep the bad for them and give you good. That no one says. Or boy, or any food. The neighbor is going to cook the food for you. That what you're getting back is the neighbors, in the case where you're the chaver and the neighbor is the Amaretz. You don't have to be choishes, not mishum shvi'is, that for sure not. That even the Amaretz was more aware of, more careful to give you back what you gave. It should not be that they give you back as sfiche shvi'is or even or any other produce, even if it may be eaten, but that is bound by the restrictions of Shemitah. It's bound by beer Shemitah. You can't do a schayda with it, etc. And not even mishum ma'asres. So the neighbor is never suspect to having an exchange. And by the way, the Braisa says there is a nuance, there is a qualification. Amosai, when does everyone agree that the neighbor will not exchange the raw material with their own? That's only when you're asked your neighbor to cook or to bake, and you gave the neighbor everything that they need, which means you also gave them the sa'ir, you gave them the yeast if it's for baking bread. You also gave them the tavl and spices. Now, by the way, we did learn before in this Masechta, most spices don't have to be tithe at all, but some of them do. Some of them do. Some of them still retain the din of a vegetable. So it's if I'm your chaver, you gave your neighbor all the raw ingredients for them to cook for you, you can rely that they gave you back what you gave them. But if you did not give them the soil or the tavlin, which means that what do you expect? The neighbor will have to put in their own soil. The neighbor will have to put in their own tavlin, even if they're not going to exchange your flour. Then, of course, what you get back will be problematic because you'll have in it some of the ingredients of your neighbor who's the Hamaretz. Or if it's in the year of Shemitah, yes, chayshes mishum shvius or mishum ma'asres. And now we're going to have the final question. Let's go to Shittas Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that we suspect a mother-in-law of exchanging the food for the son-in-law. The question how will be is that if only in the case where the daughter is engaged, or is it even after marriage? In other words, first of all, I know there's like a psychology. Once you're married already, you're more comfortable, right? You're not selling anything. You're not showing anything. It's not exactly like that. There's another halachic issue about it. So, what type of mother-in-law is our Mishnah referring to? Is it min ha'erusin, or is it also from nisuyin? And the way many Noisikelim explain the issue is that Rabbi Yehuda and the Mishnah, which is the Tanakama, gave two reasons. What are the two reasons? The two reasons are that you want betakonas bita. You want betakona where you want for your daughter betakonas bita, guys. When a person is only erusin, then she's not eating with him. She's eating at home. She's still living at home. So in other words, it sounds from our Mishnah that he's giving two reasons: betakonas bita, and the busha from her son-in-law. What does that sound like? That sounds like a nesuyin, right? That sounds like nesuyin. So maybe it's only by nesuyin. In other words, do you need to have both reasons? That's it. Do you need to have both reasons? If you need to have both reasons, then if the food is being returned to the son-in-law when the daughter is not with him, then she's not going to be eating bad food. If the mother-in-law spoiled it somehow, made it inferior, or either one of the reasons is enough. So then it's beimin ha'eres and beimin ha'nesuyin. And if not, why does Rabbi Yehuda clarifying? Why did he have to give two reasons? Maybe because you need dafka both. So the Gemara says you dafka don't need both. You don't need both. It's always. How do I know that? I'll know that from the final clause in the Mishnah. Nashmeina, from our very Mishnah, which concludes that Rabbi Yehuda, that if the produce you gave to your mother-in-law to cook, to bake, is under Shemitah year. And again, you gave your mother-in-law non-Shemitah produce. What would be the issue? Maybe she exchanged it, and no, she exchanged it for Shemitah produce. That we're not afraid. And over there, he never made mention of shame of the son-in-law. There's no mention of that. So Shanya hi taman, is there a difference over there? Beimin or Erusin, ubeimin hanasuyin? There is no such difference. Why is there no such difference? Because since, like we mentioned, Shemitah is something that even the Amoritz was more aware of, makes sense that even if the daughter is not living with the son-in-law because she's only engaged to him, still the mother-in-law won't exchange it. In other words, because of the chaymer of giving someone who's careful never to eat, let's say, shvius, or to be aware, so the person made the effort to buy non-Shemitah produce, she'll never exchange it. That's the premise. That in that case, it's always not only one or the other. Same thing, ufachi and the reisha lishanya beimin edisin bin anasuya, that we always suspect the mother-in-law to exchange the food. And in a positive way, in other words, don't think that now that you're married for 10 years, your mother-in-law doesn't care for you. She cares for you in a bad way. But she cares for you. That's the whole word. She cares for you, meaning that she doesn't want that you should have a bad impression of her food. And that works to the detriment of halacha, because that means that she's suspect that if she ruins your dish, you gave her the raw material. Now, do you know a guy that when he goes to a mother-in-law's house, he brings for her the food to cook? No. But if that were to happen, Rabbi Yehuda says she might not give you back the raw material. And therefore, you have to tithe it before you give it to him. Like we learned in the previous Mishnah. Right? And when you get back your food, you have to tithe it again.
But if it's shvius, then you can't even eat it.
Shvius, you could eat it because the mother-in-law will never do that to you.
Oh.
So it's halachically, she takes into account the seriousness of shvius. When it comes to produce, don't forget, the Amoritz is saying they tithe it. The Amoritz, they were not such big fans of this demai. They're saying, I tithe it all. Yeah, and you're telling them we don't believe you. Shkoya. But you believe me with your food. Yeah, you would believe them with your food. They are allowed to cook for you, but they lose their namanos, then they might exchange the food. So the Chachamim hold the mother-in-law will never exchange the food for the son-in-law, because if she ruins it, she'll give him ruined food. It's fine. How beautiful is this machlokes is? And on that we say, Hadran Allah Machil and Aswaniyim, and God willing, next year will be the fourth chapter.